You're listening to a production of the National Media Archive. To learn more or volunteer, go to nationalmediaarchive.com.
Never ever publish them. Jackie had asked her children time and time again, and repeated her plea some years later to her daughter Caroline on her wedding day. Suddenly turning serious, she told her never ever publish them. What was it she wanted to keep secret? A series of conversations recorded shortly after the assassination of her husband in Dallas on November 22, 1963. These are conversations about history and about her own personal history, including some very intimate secrets and controversial opinions. Since then, time has passed, and life has carried on. Jackie pursued a brilliant career as an editor in New York until her death in May 1994. Until now, Caroline had kept the promise she made to her mother. But in 2011, a television network decided to make a fictional portrayal of the Kennedy saga. The series would reveal certain family secrets. In an attempt to stop the rumor mill and to avert controversy, Caroline decided to make public the 8 hours of interviews that the still distraught Jackie gave barely 4 months after her husband's death. The young widow was then 34, and she recounts the past like a novel about her dream life with her husband John Kennedy. She cannot change the past, so she may as well rewrite it. Her confessions reveal the true personality of the former First Lady. Caroline was 7 years old when her father died. She remembers the weeks that followed the assassination in Dallas. Her distraught mother walled herself in silence. The insights she gave were interrupted by sighs. The words wouldn't come out. 1 minute loud, Jackie talked of her solitude, providing small details of her existence, the end of a dream life, the American dream which turned into a nightmare. She could still hear the incessant drumming from Jack's funeral. Jack, she always called him that in the interviews. Never John, not JFK, but Jack. That way their names are like twins. Jack and Jackie, united forever. The night of his funeral, her only thought was about knowing where she would sleep from then on. Even when everything else crumbled, life must go on. There has to be reference points, familiar places, security. Jackie left her home for the first time on December 3rd, 1963, 10 days after her husband's death. Clint Hill, her bodyguard and the man who jumped onto the hood of the presidential vehicle when the first shot rang out, was being decorated with the Medal of Honor. As First Lady of the United States, Hill had spent 3 years at her side, protecting and advising her. The only day he failed in his duty was in Dallas. The two of them felt adrift. She had lost her husband. Hill had not managed to keep him alive. Jackie said that Hill would have given his life for them. 3 days later, on Friday, December 6th, Jackie left the White House and moved a few blocks away to Georgetown. Sometime before, she had invited the journalist Theodore White to the family estate at Hyannis Port. She had chosen him as confidant to deliver her testimony of the assassination. She trusted him, so she chose him to deliver her testimony of the assassination. The journalist had always been sympathetic to the president. She didn't want anyone else to tell her story. She had an immense need to speak. She talked for 4 hours. Jackie relived the presidential trip to Dallas. She talked about her pink suit, a color she loved. Jack had asked her to wear it that day. She wore it all day despite the blood stains that soiled it to show the world what the killing of the president had done to her. Just after the fatal shots, she climbed onto the hood of the car. It was neither an act of desertion nor dishonor, but a bid for life. There was nothing more she could do for Jack. With Theodore White, she talked about the assassination in a rather delirious manner. She talked about the beauty of the inside of Jack's skull, which she held in her hands. The concentric circles of its matter with an iridescent layer of red. Robert Kennedy, one imagines, this would be her leitmotif, a beautiful and perfectly formed head that did not deserve this fate. She also talked about the death of their son Patrick, who died at birth that very summer, and an event that brought them closer together. That day, she took the weeping Jack in her arms and told him the only thing she couldn't bear would be losing him. Theodore White's article, carefully edited by Jackie, appeared in Life magazine on December 6, 1963. It was here that she laid the foundations of the Kennedy myth, starting to build the legend of JFK. A man who died a hero like King Arthur on the battlefield, sword in hand. The Lady in Pink was continually driven by a dual purpose, that of molding her own image while managing that of the president. But lost, crushed, the lady in pink was no more. In her place, a young woman in black was emerging, wondering what her future would hold. Bobby assumed Jack's place alongside her, and it was from his offices in the Department of Justice that Jackie thanked the American people for their help and support. She was enveloped, almost kept under surveillance, by her brothers-in-law Bobby and Ted. She wanted to take this opportunity to express her appreciation for the hundreds of thousands of messages which her children and she had received over the past few weeks. The knowledge of the affection in which her husband was held by all sustained her, and the warmth of these tributes was something she would treasure. The Kennedys had embarked on constructing a myth, a shrine to the glory of the assassinated hero. This began with the building of a large library in Boston, as well as a project collecting memories, stories, and accounts, including Jackie's own account, which at her request was not to be divulged until 50 years after her death. Her desire to confide in someone was endless but not reckless. She and Bobby preferred to manage the Kennedy legend themselves. They wanted to move on once and for all. She spoke to forget. The renowned historian and advisor to JFK, Arthur Schlesinger, took over responsibility for these conversations with Jackie. 7 times she invited him into the new home she had made in an upscale neighborhood of Washington. But the curious still flocked to her door. She felt constantly observed and under scrutiny. The recordings began on Monday, March 2nd, 1964. Jackie, while remaining discreet and timid, didn't hold back. Telling her own story was her route to freedom, a way of evacuating her tensions, expressing her passions, and of laying the foundations of the JFK myth. She returned to the very beginning. Right away, she contradicted the Kennedy clan's version of the legend that it was Joe, the eldest brother, who had been designated by their father to one day become president of the United States. This brother fell as a war hero, but he possessed neither Jack's stature, nor his talent, or his intelligence. No, her husband did not become president by default. She was a young, fashionable photo reporter in Washington. She sacrificed her ambition by making the choice to become the perfect wife of the young senator from Massachusetts. For the 2 years and 9 months of JFK's presidency, she kept her mouth shut, limiting herself to smiling. Now she wanted to underline her role in Jackson's career. She told how she translated books from the French about the century's greatest men, and how she had organized dinners and receptions. She was no trophy wife and didn't like that expression. And he was no narcissistic playboy, although other men were jealous of his youth and good looks. She claimed for herself the role of confidant and assistant to the future president, but she certainly was neither his muse nor his inspiration. Between them, they talked politics the whole time. Jack's ambitions crumbled in 1956 after his failed candidacy as Vice President of the United States. A candidacy that Joe, his father, thought a waste of time since it was lost from the start. Jack had thrown himself into it like a rabid dog. Jackie stood by his side. John would sleep in his hotel room alone, but she stressed that not a day went by when they didn't see each other. JFK's victory in the 1960 presidential election owed a lot to Jackie, always at her husband's side. She shook thousands of hands, keeping a calm composure, an eternal smile on her face. She became a true campaign professional. Kennedy only just won the election against Nixon, his disgraceful and sick opponent, whose wife was too submissive in Jackie's eyes. The first interview session was rambling, a sort of test run. Jackie and Arthur Schlesinger arranged to meet the following day. Jackie recounted her everyday life in the wake of Jack's death, furnishing her new home, the bills to pay, Caroline's schooling, and so on. Alone at night, she would smoke and drink and no longer answered the phone. Caroline told her school teacher about the sadness that reigned in the household. The previous night, John had torn a page out of the newspaper, showing a picture of his father's assassination in order not to hurt Mommy. During the second interview, Arthur Schlesinger questioned Jackie about the days that followed Jack's victory in the presidential election. The date was November 1960. It was the high point of their lives. Their son John was born shortly after the election, and it was an immense source of joy. Jack came to see Jackie at the maternity ward 3 times a day. This almost made her forget the summer of 1956 when, 4 years earlier, she lost her daughter Arabella due to a premature birth. Upon hearing the news, Jack, who had been on vacation in the Mediterranean, reportedly told his brother the kid's dead. "What do you want me to do?" Bobby had to convince him to get on the plane. She recalled the weeks preceding his inauguration as the new president as by far the dearest of the entire presidential episode. First off, their vacation in Florida, then the preparations for the festivities. The inauguration ceremony was held on January 20th, 1961. Both of them felt like children on Christmas Eve. Preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution of the United States. So help you God. So help me God. Jack wrote his own memorable speech. She knew this, she said, because he had recited excerpts to her in Florida. And yet it was common knowledge that a loyal collaborator wrote Kennedy's speeches. Jackie was sorry she wasn't able to kiss her husband at the inauguration. She left in the middle of the party. The president's loyal friends were all present, Frank Sinatra, Peter Lawford, and she knew that neither of them was a model of good behavior. The party promised to be a wild affair. Jack came to see her in the middle of the night. She was still awake, overwhelmed with joy. They slept in the same bed. The years of the presidency made up her best memories. Jackie accorded herself much importance, a major historical role that she probably never had. She talked of world events as if she had been there, implicated, consulted, and involved in strategic decisions. In reality, the president was alone, poorly advised, served by a bad cabinet, and envied by foreign leaders. She even recounted that Jack would have her read diplomatic telegrams. Jackie wasn't just a witness or accomplice to his power, but a genuine collaborator of the president. Cuba, Kennedy's nightmare moment. In April 1961, an attempted landing in the Bay of Pigs, led by anti-Castro troops equipped by the CIA, failed miserably. The humiliating episode proved critical for the president. The lady in pink commented that Jack, under immense pressure, found it impossible to keep his calm. Castro's presence in Cuba terrified him. The event shook them. The newly elected president's credibility had nearly been ruined in the eyes of the world. She blamed the FBI and the CIA. Jack had been given no choice. She condemned Nixon and Eisenhower as responsible for allowing Castro to come to power in Cuba. Cuba was an open wound. After the Bay of Pigs, she saw Jack cry. A year later, the president negotiated the release of the rebels with Cuba's leader, bringing an end to the episode. He then put brother Bobby in charge of special operations from that point on. Although John was tough and generally slept well, his one moment of weakness and borderline depression was triggered by Nikita Khrushchev, the leader of the Soviet Union. The pair met in June 1961 in Vienna, Austria. Kennedy and Khrushchev talked of the stars, of Laika, the dog that had just conquered space. Some weeks later, a present from Russia arrived for Jackie at the White House, one of Laika's puppies. In Vienna, she spent her time with Mrs. Khrushchev, of whom she painted a cruel portrait. Whenever Jackie took out a cigarette, the matronly woman warned, "Do not smoke so much. Russian women do not smoke." She also made it clear she thought Russian women were far superior to their American counterparts, which Jackie took as a slap in the face. She nonetheless recalled Mrs. Khrushchev had a delightful face. De Gaulle had warned her, "Be on your guard, she's the most crafty woman in Vienna." Jack found himself confronted with a cynical, warlike Khrushchev with a gloomy sense of humor. Khrushchev deemed Kennedy intelligent but weak. Jack, on the other hand, saw Khrushchev as a gangster through and through. Jackie described a terrified Kennedy who confided something of the sort. There will perhaps be a war with the USSR. Indeed, the Cuban Missile Crisis in October 1962 came a hair's breadth away from triggering a third global conflict. For 10 days and nights, the president worked in an apocalyptic atmosphere, and she remained at his side, loyal as ever. Jackie cast herself as witness of these monumental events taking place on the international political stage. The Cuban Missile Crisis ended with indisputable victory for Kennedy. Jack, enjoying his glory, told her, "If anyone has ever wanted to shoot me, today would be the perfect moment." Jackie also appeared to bask in the reflected Kennedy glory. She was the best. Jack was proud of her.